Separation of the income
Hey,
effect from
I
the
always
substitution
receive so
effect
many
after a price
questions from
change.
different students from different universities and high schools and colleges. People ask me to explain to them or to teach them how they can separate the income effect from the substitution effect after a price change. So the first thing that you need to understand is, why do people buy more or less when prices change? So today we are going to be looking at a fall in price of a product. So why do people buy more when the price of a certain product fall? It is both because of the substitution effect and the income effect. So what is the substitution effect? When prices change, like when prices fall, you can decide to substitute a product that has fallen prices for that product with an increase in prices so that you can enjoy more of that product with lower prices. Then the income effect comes this way. When prices fall, the real value of your income will increase. You have more purchasing power, so your income can now buy more. So what it means is you are going to buy more of that product that has fallen prices because your income has more real power. It has purchasing power. So now today we want to separate the substitution effect from the income effect using indifference curves. So in economics, the first thing that you need to understand is the term indifference. I don't know in English what it means, but in economics, when we say someone is indifferent, it means he's saying that given these two options or more options, these options, they're giving him the same level of satisfaction or utility. So he is undecided. He doesn't know which combination or which option to take because all the options are giving him the same level of satisfaction. I know this has happened to many people. It becomes difficult for you to make a choice because you see these things, they're just giving you the same level of satisfaction. Let me just joke with this example. Let's say you are that young man who has two girlfriends, and these two girlfriends are different, but even though they're different, they give you the same level of satisfaction when you are with them. But you're supposed to marry one person, so it becomes difficult to choose between the two girlfriends because you don't really know who to take. So at the end of the day, that's why you realize that there are some people who are in polygamy marriages just because of the fact that they are indifferent. They don't know whom to choose. That's the problem of being indifferent. So let's go back to our example of two goods. In this case, our two goods are going to be bananas and apples. So we are assuming that the prices of apples are going to fall, and I'm assuming that you are a student who has been doing economics before and you have done the topic of consumer behavior, and you have done the topic of the indifference theory. So in this case, we have our budget line, which is B1 AO, and our original indifference curve is ICO. So from what you've learned, what happens is we have a point of tangent here, point A and point B. So when you were doing your economics, you learned that if the indifference curve ICO sits on the budget line B1 AO, we say the consumer is at an optimum point or at an equilibrium point. But in this case, with this ICO and B1AO, we have two equilibrium points, point A and point B. The consumer is getting maximum satisfaction from consuming 5 bananas and 1 apple, or he can be consuming 4 and 2 apples. All these combinations, they're giving him the same level of satisfaction. So sometimes he can be indifferent. He doesn't know which combination to take now. So we want to separate the income effect from the substitution effect, assuming that the prices of apples has fallen. So I'm quite confident that you learned that if the prices of one of the goods fall, in this case we have bananas and apples. If the prices of apples fall, the budget line is going to swivel to the right from B1A0 to B1A2 to show that the consumer is now consuming more apples because of the income effect. So now we are going to start at point A here. So at point A, we are assuming that the consumer is consuming 5 bananas and 1 apple. Then the prices of apples fall. This is an advantage to him because he can now buy more apples. But why is he buying more apples? It is because of the substitution effect and the income effect. So how do you know that this is the substitution effect and this is the income effect? So when we say substitute, it means we are replacing one product with another product. So in this case, the consumer has been consuming, at point A, the consumer has been consuming 5 bananas and 1 apple. But now apples are cheaper, so the consumer can decide to sacrifice bananas, which are still expensive, and maybe consume more apples. Like in this case, he can decide to move from 1 apple to 2 apples, but to do this he has to sacrifice the amount of bananas that he was consuming before. This is called the substitution effect. You are substituting apples for bananas, so you are sacrificing bananas from 5 to 4 so that you can consume an extra apple from 1 to 2. So the substitution effect is shown by a movement along the same budget line B1A0 and along the same indifference curve ICO. So in this case, you are moving from point A to point B on the same budget line. So you are substituting apples for bananas. So if you move from point A to B, that's what we call the substitution effect. So A to B, it is equal to the substitution effect. Don't worry about my handwriting, it is very bad. Then if you move from B to C, now we are shifting to a higher indifference curve IC2. We call it the income effect, right? The income effect. So what is happening is now we are moving from B to C, or no, not actually moving, but shifting from B to C. What is happening is that just because the prices of apples have fallen, your income now has more real value. It has now more purchasing power. So when we are looking at the budget line should shift to the right in a parallel manner when income changes. So you are going to shift to a new higher budget line. In this case, the budget line becomes B1A2. But to show the income effect, we must put an imaginary budget line, and I have called this imaginary budget line here B, or that one which is dotted, like which is in red, BOA1, to show that there is a parallel line. There are 2 parallel lines showing the income effect. So whenever income rises, but in this case it is rise, it's actually your income has not yet changed, but it has changed in value because prices are falling, so you're now forced to buy more. So there is a parallel shift of the budget line from BOA0 to B1A2. So an increase in income will cause the consumer to shift from ICO to IC2, where you're going to have a new equilibrium point at point C. So point A to B is the substitution effect, and from B to C is the income effect. So the total effect of a fall in the price of apples is a movement from A up to C, or from 1 up to 3. I don't know if I've explained well how we can separate the income effect from the substitution effect after a price change. But what happens depends on the types of goods. I think you need to also revisit the different types of goods, whether they are substitute goods, whether they are, what can I call this, given goods, they are normal goods. You have different effects depending on the types of goods that you're talking about. I hope you have understood the concept. Thank you.